The UK, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece. Just hearing these names brings the scent of the ocean to mind.
These are nations defined by the sea. But strangely enough, in Europe, the ocean rarely makes it to the dinner table.
The seafood sections in supermarkets are small, and fish dishes are often relegated to a corner of restaurant menus. Forget eating it raw. Even cooked fish is prepared in only a few monotonous ways.
Compared to the hundreds of meat dishes specific to each region, seafood cuisine feels incredibly poor. But if you look the eastern edge of Asia, the story is completely different. In Korea, Japan, and China, fish is everyday life.
It's eaten raw, dried, fermented, or boiled into soups. Even seaweed is a staple ingredient.
Despite sharing the same ocean, our tables look vastly different. So the question of this video is this: why don't Europeans enjoy fish? There are several reasons why the sea has drifted away from European tables. The first reason is the sea itself.
The Atlantic Ocean in Northern Europe was never a friendly sea to humans. It is notorious for being rough and cold.
Winter waves in the North Atlantic exceed 5 meters, soaring over 20 meters during storms.
Off the coast, the water gets drastically deep, making fishing difficult with unpredictable currents.
Medieval European ships were wooden vessels relying on oars and sails. Those boats couldn't withstand the high waves.
In Iceland or Norway, entire villages of fishermen often never returned. The North Atlantic was a sea of death.
The sea was dangerous, but land was safe. Raising livestock was a more rational choice for Europeans.
Fear of the North Atlantic. That was the first reason Europeans distanced themselves from fish. There are several reasons why the sea has drifted away from European tables. The first reason is the sea itself. The Atlantic Ocean in Northern Europe was never a friendly sea to humans. It is notorious for being rough and cold. The average winter wave height in the North Atlantic exceeds 5 meters, and during storms, it soars over 20 meters. Just a little off the coast, the water gets drastically deep, making fishing difficult, and the currents are unpredictable. In these harsh waters live cold water species like cod, herring, and rockfish. The variety is low, but the sheer number of individual fish is massive. The second reason lies in a sea that is the complete opposite of the North Atlantic. The sea to the south of Europe is the calm, warm, and gentle Mediterranean. But beneath that peaceful surface lies an environment where life struggles to thrive. The Mediterranean is essentially a closed sea. Its only connection to the Atlantic is the Strait of Gibraltar. Because seawater flows through this narrow passage, only about 14 kilometers wide, ocean circulation is very slow. If the water doesn't mix, oxygen and nutrients don't spread throughout the sea. On top of that, there are almost no large rivers flowing into the Mediterranean coast. Except for France's Rhone and Italy's Po, most rivers are short and steep, flowing straight into the sea. There is an absolute lack of sediment and nutrients flowing in from the land. Low nutrients mean less plankton. Less plankton means fewer small fish, and consequently, fewer big fish.
Europe was a land rich enough it didn't need the sea. Most lived inland, far from the ocean.
Without developed logistics, fresh fish transport was difficult, so meat, dairy, and grains became the diet's core.
Humans are instinctively drawn to meat. It's a complete food, packed with protein, fat, iron, and vitamins, and very filling. In East Asia, however, where raising livestock was hard, the sea became the primary protein. Maritime civilizations along coastlines ensured quick seafood distribution. Conversely, in Europe's plains, meat was a stable resource. The sea was often inaccessible, and fish preservation difficult. On the continent, seafood naturally became a fringe food. Europeans eat less fish because their land was already so plentiful. Another key reason is the inherent fishy smell of many European marine species. Fish in Europe's cold, saline waters produce TMAO for survival. This compound is the main culprit behind that distinct, strong odor, unlike the milder scent of warm water fish preferred in Asian cuisine.
Before refrigeration, this made eating fresh European fish challenging. Consequently, Cooking methods focused on masking the smell using salt, lemon, and strong herbs, rather than celebrating its natural flavor. This tradition shaped European fish dishes for centuries.
Finally, the legacy of religion and social class played a crucial role. During the medieval Catholic era, fish was eaten on fasting days, particularly Fridays and during Lent, as a mere protein substitute. Meat, in contrast, symbolized indulgence, wealth, and power, often reserved for the aristocracy.
Fish thus became associated with obligation and poverty, especially for commoners, who often accessed only cheaper, preserved varieties. This long-standing cultural memory cemented its reputation as less desirable, profoundly influencing European preferences even today.
There is also the issue of the fishy smell that kept Europeans away. Europe's oceans are cold and highly saline. Fish living in this environment have made special chemical adaptations to survive.
Cold water fish produce a protective substance to keep their cells from freezing. It's called TMAO.
This substance is the main culprit behind that distinct fishy odor. A similar thing happens in salty water. If the seawater is salty, fish must produce more osmotic regulators to prevent water loss.
Again, TMAO plays that role, so fish from the salty North Atlantic and Mediterranean generally have a strong fishy smell.
The final reason Europeans don't enjoy fish lies in the legacy of religion and culture.
The time when Europe began eating fish in earnest was the medieval Catholic era, but it started as an obligation, not for gastronomy.
Catholic society had a rule called fasting days. To honor the day Jesus was crucified, they didn't eat meat on Fridays.
The same applied during Lent leading up to Easter, because meat symbolized blood and carnal desire.
So people supplemented their protein with fish instead of meat, but fish was strictly a substitute, not a meal to be enjoyed. This perception was reflected in cooking methods. Since the starting point was, what can we eat instead of meat, there was no reason to agonize over how to make fish delicious. Getting rid of the smell was enough. For a long time, fish on the European table was food eaten out of necessity, while meat was food eaten for joy.
To summarize, Europe's seas were cold, rough, and, while beautiful, empty. The coastlines couldn't nurture life. The land was already abundant, so there was no need to rely on the sea.
Added to this were religion and class, making fish a symbol of restraint and poverty. There was also the issue of the fishy smell inherent to many cold water species.
As natural conditions, human conditions, and cultural memories overlapped, the European table drifted further from the sea. In contrast, Asia's seas were shallow and fertile. Rivers breathed life into the ocean with soil and nutrients, and people lived alongside that sea. So the East Asian table became an extension of the sea, while the European table became an extension of the land. Europe ate the richness of the land, and Asia ate the richness of the sea. That's why in Europe, fish is a sidekick to meat, rather than the main event. These differences have divided the food culture, recipes, and even the world of taste between the two continents today.
What surprised you most about this deep dive into European food culture? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating explorations.